Hey everyone. So I actually recorded this earlier and then realized that I had my earphones on and there was this obnoxious banging of my hair against the microphone. And I didn't want you guys to have to deal with that. So I'm gonna do a first, which is I'm gonna sum up what came through the first time earlier this morning, which is about when your soul curriculum does not match up with your business strategy. Who's been there? This is very fresh for me because I just came out of a period where I was trying to launch another round of my teacher training. I, in the past, had only done one a year, but it felt like, I think this is the year to do two. And so what happened was I actually had an initial hit to not do that. But I felt like, oh, this is just my fear. Like, I really need to just get back on the horse and do it again because I had a very intense experience running the round earlier this year. As a collective group, we had decided to call in some pretty intense experiences and healing, which was wonderful, but it really took a lot out of me. And I felt like, I think I'm going to wait till 2019 for the next one. Decided not to follow that instinct. Which I guess was my soul's way of trying to get me the memo, which I didn't really get fully. And I proceeded to try to launch teacher training, except my soul had some very other plans, including some insanely deep trauma healing that has been in my system since I was a very, very teeny little kid living in the civil war in Lebanon. And it all decided it needed to come up this month, right when I was launching my teacher training. And it's not the first time this happens. And I'm curious if this is something that you've encountered as well, because I see a lot of people when their minds and their egos are trying to go through like the game plan of what needs to happen. And then many times we get a physical injury or physical illness that really stops us. And in fact, I think the last Rebelle report that I did do a few weeks ago was about spiritual flus, and that was exactly around the time where I sort of started to get sick and then was okay for a few days and then got sick again because, again, I wasn't listening. And this is not to shame, blame myself or anyone else in this experience, because many times it's really, it's hard for us to know and to interpret the language of our soul and understand that this is actually the message that's trying to come through. But really, in this process in which I did get a combination of spiritual flu, if you want to call it that, or just a lot of physical pain in my body, throat stuff, diaphragm spasm, throat, neck spasm, all the things really. I had to really just sit and be with myself, and I had to really come to terms with the fact that ultimately I don't have control over anything, which is great when you're a control freak. Or let me rephrase that. Recovering control freak. And so oftentimes we find ourselves like really, really, really humbled. No, I did. By the smallness of us and also the bigness at the same time, how we are connected to something so much bigger, and yet in the scheme of things we don't actually get to choose a lot of the times. And I know, there's equally relevant philosophy around, empowering yourself and being like, I am the creatrix of my reality. And there's times when that's really, really true, and there's times where it's debatable. But ultimately, it's really a co-creation, right? There's times when you get to decide, and there's times when your soul source, universe, God takes over and says, nah, you keep going this way, and we want you to go this way, and you keep going this way, and we want you to go this way. And it's incredibly humbling when you just don't really understand what's happening. You don't understand what direction you're going, and you have to just trust and have faith. Something I'm not really great at. When you are born into war, and when you are constantly waiting for the next explosion, when you're constantly holding your breath for the next thing that's going to go wrong, even when things are going right, it's really hard to cultivate a sense of faith. And so this has been a lot of my biggest spiritual practice right now, is really deepening into my faith and trust and surrender, so that I can co-create, and so I can bring in the best version of service into the world, because my mind may think I am of highest service by running teacher training a second time, and my soul clearly is like, nah, it's not happening. So that's really what I want to talk to you about today, is just how many times we forget that our strategy and our mind don't always get to choose, and that we sometimes have to be brought to our knees because of a physical injury or like pain. To surrender and to put our hands up in the air. And one thing that really struck me, which I don't remember, I may have even mentioned this on one of the reports before. So I've lost sense of time being in this like illness, fever, achy stupor that I was in. But essentially, as I was going through this pain, I was reading Anatomy of the Spirit by Dr. Carolyn Myss, which was handed to me by my roommate. She was like, read this now. And there's one thing she mentioned about resignation versus surrender. And it really struck a chord, because I think often we get those two confused. And resignation is one where we're really just throwing in the towel. We're going like, fuck this shit, I don't fucking know, whatever, let's just know. This is me a lot of the times. I can get very emo and frustrated when things are not going my way. And then there's surrender. There's surrender, which actually comes with love and an open heart and trust and faith, where you're letting go, but you're not throwing in the towel. And you're just allowing space for other forces that you don't recognize, that you don't understand, that maybe you don't see, to come help. And it's so freaking hard for someone like me who needs proof and evidence for everything. Even though I also equally have a deep, deep knowing that my body does operate with so many subtle energies and with things that I don't see and that I don't understand, and that even things like this, like sitting in meditation and coming out and trusting that there is a message that needs to be shared with the collective, doing that and trusting that is a big part of that spiritual practice. So I'm here to let you know today that if this is something you've been experiencing, because I think for a lot of us that we are in this collective pause, this collective introspection, reflection, limbo of sorts, where we feel like we know things are changing and we know that our soul is yearning for something, but our mind hasn't quite wrapped around what it is and how it looks like, and that's okay. That sometimes we need to just pause and make space for co-creation and for other things to come in, even though it seems crazy when we're in a world that is asking us to continue to go, go, go and produce all the time. So from my heart to yours, this is your permission slip. It's okay to pause. We have time, even though it doesn't feel like it. I know.